Thank you. Welcome to the September meeting of the Communications Council, Citizens Communications Council of Radnor Township. We have a number of issues that we will address tonight, and I'd like to begin with a report from Radnor Studio 21.
This is sort of a dual report following me. I yield the floor to our president, Jack Brooks, to speak specifically to some of the issues and the problems that we face. These will not be new problems to this group. You probably will say, you know, haven't we heard this before? Is this deja vu all over again? Well, unfortunately, the answer is yes. But let me go to the positive side of it all. One of the things we've been doing, and we have spent about $133,000 out of our meager budget. Incidentally, our normal cash budget each year is $118,000. So about a year's worth of budget coming out of whatever we've been able to scrape together has gone into bringing us up to the digital world, at least in distribution and in bringing things in. One of the things we have done is be able to launch something called the Quadrangle Project, which basically brings in the best of lectures and education from all over the world through and I've mentioned this before, through a server that's at Princeton University. For those orange and black people can stand up and cheer, but under any circumstances, they have brought in things from, for instance, Thomas Friedman talking about his book, The World is Flat, at the National University of Singapore. All of a sudden, we were able to bring that in and put it on for the edification of people right here in Radnor Township, which is, of course, our primary function. This has taken up, in total, a lot of hours on our thing. We've had McPherson, James McPherson, very fine professor emeritus of history, talking about the Civil War, and we then brought things in from Maine about the Civil War. All of this has been made possible through interconnections that we have built, servers we have gained. We're no longer operating in the old analog world. That just doesn't work very well anymore. We're not playing back VHS tapes anymore. We capture everything and everything goes out. But we've had to pay for all of that to do that digital upgrade. It's still, we're stuck in the studio with a single, barely operable 20-some-year-old camera. And maybe our learned friends from Comcast can speak later about this, but the fact is that this summer we spent time and energy on a project with the Library of Congress in coordination with our congressman's office. We were bringing in veterans. I am a veteran. I am very aware that those of us who have served are passing away at an unbelievable amount, rapid, not obviously those of us who are a little younger, but the fact is as you get older, time catches up with you, and your memory will be gone if somebody doesn't capture it. And so with our single operative camera, we have tried to do this for the Library of Congress and also for Charles Riley's How Proudly They Served that we do right here in this community. I have been at this position for something like 8, 9 years. And, oh yeah, it's access television has been sort of an approach that has been done, particularly from Comcast. You know, we're the big guys and who the hell are you? Well, I brought with me a little thing called an Emmy. You get these because you know what you're talking about. And I am tired for the last year of being dismissed that a studio should be a single camera. No, it should be 2 cameras. I don't care. Go into anywhere in the world and find out what a studio should be. A couple of cameras, some lights, an ability to switch, and then what we've done, try to get into the digital world on the other end of distribution. The challenge has been there, and we have risen to it within a very, very limited budget. The sacrifices have come out of those of us who work there. We work for very modest salaries. I mean, it's $118,000 a year. That's our total budget. Obviously, we have done that, and we've done it willingly. But we would like those who have contractually agreed to provide a certain level of service, a studio, read it, it's right there. And for the last year, I personally have put entire television stations on the air in less than a year. In fact, in 9 months. It can be done. All you have to have is the willingness and the desire. Well, we have the willingness, we have the desire, we have the need, because we are increasingly, I have to tell my producers, look, guys, you're going to have to do with a single camera. Well, that's lousy television. It's the best we can do, but it's what we have to live within. So those, obviously there's some passion here, and it isn't an overnight passion. You've heard it before. But if I remember right, the last time we sat in front of this group, or I spoke to you, we had the same issues, and the time before, et cetera, et cetera. That we have to come to a resolution, and Jack Brooks will speak more to that, but yes.
George, let me go back to the quadrangle project for a moment. As I understand the technology, the programs are loaded down via the internet?
Correct.
So that whole project, as well as other programs that you bring in, come in via the internet?
Many do. Some still come by tape or DVD.
But the quadrangle, basically.
Yeah, the quadrangle is entirely...
Basically, and this is a
Yes.
new venture that we're in.
And it requires a broadband interconnection, which we obtain from
Right.
Comcast, I mean, from Verizon.
If, correct me if I'm wrong, did you have any interruption recently in your internet service? And if you did, what occasioned it?
Part of the studio agreement from the very beginning was that they would provide a functioning studio, and as part of that provided telephone, internet, et cetera. And then it was cut off because Comcast had not paid the telephone bills.
The internet was cut off?
No, basically what was cut off was the telephone. So we went to Verizon, who have always been the provider. Comcast has always paid Verizon, and said, look, could we get back our fax, our interconnect for our satellite, and our basic telephone service? And we do that, and we have been paying that. In addition to which, we upgraded to a broadband 20 meg throughput service, which, as I understood it, was that part Comcast would continue to pay. Monday morning, I come in here, I got absolutely zero internet connectivity because Comcast had not paid the bill.
So
that had happened before with the telephone. This is not a new phenomenon.
Okay.
I have told Verizon, send us the bill, we'll pay for it, and maybe somebody will wake up to their obligations.
So the functioning of our studio in terms of obtaining programs for broadcast was actually down for several days before, or at least a couple of days?
Yeah,
as far as
I
you know?
mean, getting, as you know, we're in the newspaper, in the mainline media newspapers on a regular basis, and the ticket with our program guide.
So
I had to go home and go on and redo it that way.
So the studio actually failed because of a default in
Yes.
Comcast paying the bill?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else, gentlemen? If not, but you've heard it before. I yield to Jack Brooks, who is the president of Radnor Studio 21, which itself, of course, is a standalone nonprofit.
Good evening, everyone. 120 days ago, I think it was, we were all here discussing this exact same issue. Now I have to phrase it again. If I hadn't paid my cable bill to Comcast, and I do use Comcast in my home, for 120 days, they would have taken the equipment out and turned me off, plain and simple, and crushed my credit report in this credit environment. That's simple. We're a nonprofit that makes our business of public television in Radnor based not only on what we receive from the contractual obligation that they willingly signed and willingly have renewed and are wanting to renew another one. And we make a small amount of that money in revenue. And then we depend on our producers to help us fundraise. Our annual Taste of Radnor event, which I know is going to be a difficult environment. We're spending our money to keep the studio alive. You asked for the number the last time we were here. It was $122,000 that we had spent out of fundraising money that we raised, not money that came from operations. It's now $133,000, and we still have one camera operational. In this township that has schools wired and cameras everywhere else, we're a TV studio. We're not a tin can operation. I'm here to take some of the producer aggravation off of George because I understand we put George as the board. He is our employee. He's on our front lines. He's the one that has to hear every day of these issues. Our board hears of it every 30 days. Something has to be solved. And I need it to happen, and I need it to happen now. Because if one camera craps out, which is 20 years old and on borrowed time, I don't know how we'll do shows in Radnor. And maybe that's ultimately what they want. But they're not going to do it. This behemoth is residenced here in the city of Philadelphia. It's an organization that has plenty of people running around, and maybe that's part of the issue. My issue is I believe they have both a moral and ethical, business ethic, to solve this problem. This is an ethical issue now. They signed a contract, and all I'm asking you to do, because we can't, is to hold them to their contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Questions?
Thanks, Jack. Would Comcast care to comment on these remarks?
Well, let me first address the concerns and say that, as you well know, that I'm not empowered to speak on these things, and Kevin will address them and is well aware of them. And to the issue of the billing and whatnot, this is this moment that I've been made aware of it, and I can also assure you that Kevin is not aware of it, because if he was, he would have told me to come here and speak on that. But George, I'd be happy to take that back tomorrow and look into it and get a response immediately for you. So, can I honor any additional questions?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I don't have a question, I have a comment, which I hope you will take back. Your franchise has 21 months, roughly, to go. Comcast does not have, much as you might think it does, an absolute right to renewal. Renewal depends upon whether you are meeting the needs of the community and whether you have a proposal to meet the needs of the community for renewing your franchise. If we have to go to a formal proceeding, we will define those needs. And one might start with your current obligations under your current contract. You are not meeting those obligations, and you have not been meeting those obligations for a considerable period of time. I'm going to recommend tonight that this council adopt a resolution which deems Comcast to be in default of its agreement and gives it 30 days to bring yourself into compliance with the terms of the agreement. That's the period you have under your franchise agreement. In the discussions prior to this meeting, you said you needed 2 weeks. So 2 weeks is much less than 30 days, which you have as a matter of law. But I also remind you that as we go into these negotiations, the past record will certainly be an element which we will consider in whether or not to renew your franchise.
If I might,
Any other
yeah.
comments?
If you offer that resolution, I will second that resolution. And I think it's high time that we start the clock running on performance. We have attempted for the last year or more, and there were occasions before that, to get what you might consider voluntary compliance with their both contractual legal obligations, their ethical business obligations to move forward. I think we need to set the clock running so that we now have a time, so if we pass it tonight, then the clock starts and we can be sure, at least once the clock runs, that we will have the opportunity to hold them to their obligations.
Any other comments or questions?
I just am flabbergasted, and you beat me to seconding the resolution. I just don't understand it. I don't know if they can shed any light on it. Since I've been on the board, this has been an issue, and it just baffles me that particularly a local company this large would just be utterly unresponsive. I mean, is there any explanation? We have different people coming in. I mean, it doesn't matter. We're moving ahead anyway, but just as an aside, do you have anything? How can this be?
I spoke with Kevin Broadhurst today and relayed our concerns and our issues, and he was a little confused, I think. He sent his envoy, and he told me that they would resolve the problem of the camera by Friday. He asked for a month, and I gave him 2 days. And he said it would be done, he would resolve it by Friday. What resolution means to him, I'm not sure. Historically, it hasn't been very concrete. But as I indicated to our guest tonight, we need to deal in very specific terms. We're not interested in, it takes 4 days for the repair company to get it onto the schedule and 3 more days to fix it and 2 days to ship it. We're not interested in any of that. If Comcast hasn't got enough leverage with a repair company to get 1 camera fixed, then I've lived in a different business world than you live in. So I think you understand how serious we are about this. We will pass this resolution tonight. We'll give you a copy to take back so there's no question as to what we did. And the clock is turning, but I want the clock to be turned forward. I don't want 30 days. I want this done right away. And I think Kevin understands that. I said, I don't understand why it's a question of money. That's all it amounts to. The inventory of equipment was taken at least a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. And those people at the repair company or the evaluation company can assign dollar values to all of the obligations that you have within the studio, in addition to which is the repair of the camera. That's a number. Whatever the number is, it's a number. And I told Kevin today he's got to go to the person in Comcast, which I think is 2 levels above his authority, to get approval for that amount of money and issue the check and get it done. It's not complicated. He kept talking in abstract terms, and I told him, I don't want to hear it. It's money. And Comcast is obligated to come up with the money, and they ought to do it. Now, we gave them an alternative, which was to monetize the whole operation at Radnor 21, which would do away with this whole problem. We would be responsible for the maintenance of the equipment and replacement of equipment as long as we got whatever the monetized number was. For reasons unbeknownst to me, they never responded to that. That's the way to really solve the problem in the long term, and that's something we're going to have to talk about in negotiations. We're scheduled to begin negotiations on the 25th of September. I'd like to have Comcast call us and confirm that that's the date, and then we'll move on. Okay? Unfortunately, you're the messenger, and we would like to shoot you, but it's not allowed.
That's not appropriate.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Would it be appropriate at this time, Mr. Chairman, for Bruce to introduce the resolution?
I was going to say that. How did you know that?
Oh, I read your mind every once in a while.
Bruce, you have the chair? Yeah, I have one.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to introduce a resolution which has been drafted here. And basically, it recites Comcast's obligations under its franchise agreement with respect to keeping the studio equipment in good working order. It recites that both Radnor 21 and this council have repeatedly requested that Comcast perform these obligations. It recalls that in 2003, when these obligations were not being met, this council had to intervene, and as a matter of mediation, there was a further understanding signed by both parties, which again has not been lived up to by Comcast. And it also recites the failure of Comcast to pay the utility bills for the studio, resulting in the cutoff of service and damage to Radnor Studio 21 and its operations. And it concludes that now the Radnor Communications Council deems Comcast to be in default of its obligations set forth above as of the date of this resolution, and gives them 30 days from the date of this resolution to cure. It also recommends that the township assert its legal right to liquidated damages in the sum of $500 per day until cure is effected, that liquidated damages to start running 30 days from today.
Are there any comments?
I second the motion.
The motion, sorry.
I just have one brief comment,
Yeah.
and I apologize, Bruce. If we could use the technical official name of this body in the resolution, the Radnor Citizens Communication Council.
Didn't we change our name?
We changed it to Citizens Communication Council. So,
Fine.
Yes, we did.
so if we could
The
just make
amendment is accepted.
that one minor change, that's all I have.
Are there any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show there was unanimous approval to recommend to the Board of Commissioners the invocation of this document with the objective of getting this issue between Comcast and Radnor Studio 21 resolved once and for all.
Mr. Chairman, would you give a copy of this?
We have
to
done
the-
that.
You
Thank you.
did get a copy of
Yes.
it? Okay, you do acknowledge that you received a copy of it?
Do you have any questions?
I don't know.
And you understand the $500 a day?
I do.
Yeah, okay. All right. A report from Verizon. Are you having a good time?
Good evening, everyone. I just have one report or one issue to bring to your attention. And as there was notice sent to Radnor Township in August that a small percentage of the customer base for Verizon for standalone TV customers that had purchased service in 2007 or 2008 under the Premier service, there is a $10 price increase effective August 1st for just standalone customers that are not under contract. That will go in effect on August 1st for that service. Any customer that is currently under contract or is in a bundle will not be affected by this price increase.
And they've
happens
been
on August
notified, presumably.
1st.
Presumably, they've been notified.
They have been notified as of September 1st, correct?
And so it's effective August 1st?
Yes.
So it comes on what?
Oh, I'm sorry, October 1st, I apologize.
October 1st.
October 1st is the day that the price increase happens. My apologies.
Okay.
And that would be the only update that I have for the council tonight.
What's a standalone? You say a standalone
A
customer.
standalone means it's not bundled with phone or internet.
Okay.
Just, you only have TV service, Fios TV service with Verizon.
And is that a large number of customers?
No, it's less than 5% of our customer base.
But in just sort of absolute number terms, what?
I don't have any idea.
Are you John Strasser?
That is me, yes.
Okay. Because I got a letter from Verizon indicating that John's going to take responsibility for his liaison with Radnor Township.
That is correct.
And welcome.
Thank you very much.
As you can see, we're a very amiable group to get along.
I look forward to working with you.
Okay, any questions for Verizon? Thank you for rehooking up Radnor Studio 21's internet connection.
You're
Okay.
very welcome.
All right, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay, old business. I think under old business, we have our discussion with the Planning Council. And
Yeah.
I'd appreciate if John Riley would summarize what we've done so far, where we are, and where we think we need to go.
Sure, I'd be happy to. You may recall earlier this year, we approved, this body approved amendments to the wireless communication facilities section of the code, which were to be proposed for consideration by the Board of Commissioners. We were advised, as part of the process, that those proposed amendments would be reviewed by the Planning Commission. And they were, I believe, in May, submitted to the Planning Commission for its consideration. On July the 6th, Chairman Glynn had the pleasure of appearing before the Planning Commission at that body's first meeting to consider the amendments. And the Planning Commission had several questions on the proposed amendments and requested that this group, and more specifically, the subcommittee of this group that was formed to prepare the amendments, respond to a series of questions that the Planning Commission had put together. So on September 8th of this year, Mr. Glynn, Mr. Hartel, and myself appeared before the Planning Commission and tried as best we could to respond to the series of questions that had been put forth in the July meeting, as well as questions that came up at that September meeting. Through the course of that process, it was put to us, and we gladly agreed to reconvene the subcommittee to address some specific issues that the Planning Commission had, and we discussed at the September 8th meeting. The timeline that we are looking at has the subcommittee returning to those amendments and drafting any changes that we believe are required and responsive to the Planning Commission in time for our next meeting, which is October the 21st. Once those amendments are considered by this group and approved, hopefully they will then be resubmitted to the Planning Commission with a view to being on their agenda for their November meeting, which is on November the 2nd. This timing is somewhat condensed, I will admit, but if the goal is to have these amendments adopted prior to the end of this year, this is pretty much the schedule we were on. What the subcommittee will do at this point is take another cut at the amendments that had been previously proposed, adopt or incorporate into the amendments some changes that are responsive to the Planning Commission's comments, and then come back before this group in the October meeting to try to move the ball further forward.
I would suggest, based on the meeting we had with the Planning Commission, that if possible, on a sort of off-the-record discussion you have with Mark Rhodes, who's chairman of the Planning Commission, so we don't run into, we should have thought of this and we should have thought of that. Mark was, I think, sensibly inclined to do it once and do it right, and therefore we're not going to rush into the October meeting, but the November meeting should be sufficient. So I think he would be responsive to that, sort of briefly looking at our final changes before we bring it to the commission, so we get all of the questions out of the way and get the thing done. Do you think so, John?
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Planning Commission had some well thought out questions for us, and are also, they just want to see us once again.
Yeah.
And I think we want to see them once again. So however that can best be accomplished is an admirable goal.
Okay, so that's good. Are there any comments related to redoing the ordinance?
I just want to comment that John did a masterful job in putting together the presentation and represented this committee very, very well before the board, which I think resulted in defining the questions that we needed to address and set the table for getting them through the planning commission so that the ordinance could ultimately be enacted by the commissioners.
You
So I
keep
think
usurping my lines, Arthur. But I agree, John did an outstanding job. He presented a PowerPoint presentation that was very comprehensive and kept control of the subject in our hands, or in his hands, and that allowed us to get the thing done with the commission. It was a great job, John, and we appreciate the time you put in. Okay, any other questions? Okay, new business?
Mr. Chairman,
Steve?
under new business, just letting the council know that I received a letter from Extenet Systems. They are a backhaul provider of wireless communications devices. They put in a letter of intent to install 2 pole-top units in the area of Darby Paoli Road. The letter, or I contacted him today and told him that there's additional information that's needed for a formal application process, and they said that they would start getting those materials together and submit them to the township, and then they would eventually end up back with us again.
Okay, so they haven't formally requested anything. This is just a letter of intent.
That is correct.
So it's clear to everybody.
And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, any other new business? Comments? Public participation. Are there any questions from the public? Thank you very much.
Move we adjourn.
Move adjourn? So moved. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate everybody's contribution. And hopefully we're finally on the right road with Comcast. I will call Broadhurst tomorrow. Although he understands my position, I will reiterate it.